everyone, and welcome to Huddle in Place, not Huddle in Place, to our Sunday talks within the Nine-Sided Circle. I am one of your two hosts. I'm Nora Kyle.
And I'm the other one of your two hosts, Mushtaq Ali, and I am in fact huddling in place right now, sitting in the middle of the street in Taos, New Mexico, a month and a half from now.
Oh, are you? That would be great.
Yeah, that's when this picture was taken. This is early November in Taos.
Aw. Wintertime.
Yep.
So, do you want to do our spiel for today?
All right, let me do our spiel. So, first of all, welcome. Second of all, welcome if you're watching this on the rebound on YouTube. And if you are, let me suggest to you that it would be incredibly cool for you to go right down there and click that subscription button if you're not subscribed to us, and then click the notification button so that you can know every time we put out a video, because we don't put them out more than once a week, sometimes twice a week, and you really want to know when it's time to pay attention to that. So I'm not begging. I'm merely asking in a very whimpering sort of way, please subscribe. But yeah, we would love to have you. And if you look down in the comments below, you will find all manner of wonderful things, including how to sign up for our mailing list and how to send us money. Because pretty much everything we're doing right now, between now and when the pandemic ends, because people are having such a hard time, many of us with finances, is that we have decided that everything we're going to do is going to be by voluntary donation. We aren't charging for classes or anything like that because we don't want to create a burden on anybody who would like to do our stuff. And so, of course, that means that we're also suffering financially, which, of course, goes with it. So we would love it if you would, drop a few coins in the begging bowl, as it were. Noor will sing and I will dance if you do that.
Yep, I will do that for coin.
Yes.
And
so let me tell you about the cool thing that is going to be happening in 10 days now?
Yeah,
Something like
10
that.
days.
On the 30th of September, we start the annual Nine-Sided Circle virtual retreat, the Khalwat, where those of us who want to can spend a month going inward and really doing some serious spiritual practice. We will be meeting virtually once a week. We are sending out all of the practices. This will include meditations and recitation, physical exercise, breathing exercise, reading.
Mm-hmm. And the reset way of eating.
The reset, yes. It's not a diet because there is no calorie counting. It is a way of resetting your body through food.
Yep.
And it's easy to do. It doesn't require that you count calories or anything silly like that. And this, of course, is all voluntary. Do what you can.
And it's only for the month. This is something that we do specifically as a annual practice, a collective practice, that is. And it will be ending October 30th. Yep. We want to make sure that we kind of have a general shared deadline between the various various regions of the world that we are inviting to take part in this. And that means accommodating many, many time zones. So this will be ending before Halloween, which I am happy about because that means that I get to totally break my retreat fast, so to speak, with candy, which I'm always excited about. Halloween is important. And I want to be able to fully enjoy it. So we figured you guys might feel the same, and we wanted to make sure that that was doable. So September 30th through October 30th is when we will be doing this, but we will have one group session that will take place on November 1st, because we wanted to make sure that we had a way to close out the retreat in a meaningful way.
Yep. And what's more meaningful than getting all dressed up in costume and going out and getting huge amounts of candy?
At least in spirit, right? We may not be able to do that in practice. So there you go. We have already launched signups for that, and I will put the link for this in the description as well as in the chat box for people who are with us right now live.
Yeah.
And you guys will be able to check that out if you haven't already. So we will have more on that upcoming next Sunday and through email for those who have already signed up. So look out for that stuff. So what are we talking about today, Mishtak?
This evening, we are going to discuss something that is incredibly important, of paramount importance, which is your duty to yourself to question. And you might remember, some of you, a few weeks ago, we did a talk on the traps on the path. And one of them was the starry-eyed, true believer trap. And I'll put right here, a link to this plus at the end, so you can watch that. And this talk came about because Noor and I have been watching a series on HBO called The Vow, which is about the Nexium people, Keith Raniere and all those guys, and they're now this huge sex cult and everything, but it's much more than that. And in watching what they're doing, I realized that if people had only asked the right questions, none of that would have ever happened. None of the stuff that people are bitching about would have ever happened if the right questions would have been asked. And it's absolutely necessary to ask everybody who purports to be a teacher or who sits on the interwebs and tells you things like I'm telling you or Noor is telling you. You need to ask the questions. And this guy, Raniere, claimed to be the smartest man in the world and to have invented all of this technology that was changing lives. And nobody went, wait a minute, how do I know you're the smartest guy in the world? What's the evidence for that? You have all of these things that are going on that you claim that you invented. How do I know you invented them? And how do I know that you work? Now, the interesting thing is that at least some of the stuff that the guy put together did work, and it worked amazingly well. There is solid evidence that he took a couple of people with Tourette's and helped them not have all of the twitches and the words and the freaking out that they were doing. And this is something that stuck. So his tech was good. His tech was not something that he invented. In watching this, I'm looking at it and I'm going, oh, there's NLP. There's Ericksonian hypnosis. There's cognitive behavioral therapy. There's Gestalt therapy. There is Scientology processing. You can see all of the things that he drew from, and yet nobody, as far as I can tell in this whole group, ever questioned that. And it's like, isn't that what you're supposed to do? If somebody makes a claim, I mean, this is one reason I love this group. If I were to say, hey, I'm the smartest person in the world, Ilmar would not let the last word get out of my mouth before he'd be down my throat about that. And that's one of the reasons we keep him around, because shit like that keeps you honest. If you are acting like you're a teacher, you have to be able to be questioned. And you have to be able to answer the questions. So tonight is about your duty to question.
So what do we mean when we say that, and why are we using the language we're using there?
Because if you do not question, if you buy the pig in the poke without ever looking, then you are down the starry-eyed path. That's what happened to all of these people. I mean, they literally drank the Kool-Aid and never said, what do you mean you're the smartest guy in the world? Show me some advanced physics. You know, by what criteria are you judged this? And what does that mean for us here?
Yeah.
How do we know you can do what you can do? And that's the interesting thing, is because he could do at least a lot of what he claimed to do. His technology worked for what he said he was working on, which is emotional stuff. Um, you know, he wasn't going for awakening. He was going for making people feeling better, having happier dreams. And he was obviously really good at that. But he was also a charlatan. And that's an interesting combination, that you got these things here. And he's not the first guy to do this. I have stories. I mean, I know people who have done exactly this same thing. And I'll probably talk about them during this talk, because it's important that people think about this stuff. And to constantly question, especially when you are told things that you have to do. One of the things to get into the super secret part of the organization that he had was that you had to give collateral. Collateral was described as something that you could be incriminated by or would ruin your life if it were revealed. And nobody went, wait a minute, I'm not going to do that. Why would I do that? So you can trust me? We've been hanging out for all these years and you can't trust me? Bullshit. Nobody did that I can tell. At least of the people who are showing up there, they just went, oh, here's these pictures, here's these statements. And they did not have the spiritual integrity to realize that that demand was crap. I mean, think about it. If I sat here to any of you and said, in order for me to give you the secret teachings, you have to give me all of the passwords to your bank accounts. I won't use them, but you have to give them to me so that I know that I can trust you.
Yeah, this is essentially what was asked.
Yeah, you should be doing this at me. If you're not, I'm disappointed in you. Because nobody should do that.
What do you think might cause a person to kind of walk into that, either unthinkingly or against their intuitive sensation of, ooh, I don't know if I want to do this, but I'm just going to go ahead, I guess?
Yeah, well, lack of critical thinking ability, that's a big one. Because any reasoning mind would have looked at how that was set up and gone, there's something really off here.
Mm.
So that's important. Don't give your critical thinking ability to somebody just because they tell you that they're the smartest person in the world. But he was also, I mean, he used a lot of good NLP technique in a bad way. You know the trick of, if I tell you three things that you know to be true, then you're going to tend to believe the fourth thing that I tell you that you can't verify, right? You all know how that works. That's basic human tendency. If I go, you're listening to the sound of my voice, and you can hear my voice however you're hearing it now. And as you listen to the sound of my voice, you can feel the temperature of the air where you're sitting. And you can just let your mind feel the temperature of the air on your skin. And then you can feel the pressure of your feet as they contact the ground or the chair. And I want you to notice these three things. You can hear my voice. You can feel the temperature of the air. You can feel your feet. And in a second, you're going to find that you want to blink. You don't have to blink, but you're going to find that you want to blink. Now, I'm being really obvious about how this works, right? But that's a standard hypnotic pattern. I tell you three things that I know you can verify, then I slip in something that you can't verify, but it's going to happen. You go, oh yeah, I blinked. And then I start doing my induction. And next thing you know, you're deep in trance and your hand is floating up and all of this kind of stuff. And, you know, I'm giving you suggestions about where you want to put your 401k, which is in my pocket. He was doing that sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, as Aaron puts it, quote, trust me, I'll catch you, unquote. But why am I falling?
Yeah. So I'm picking on this one guy here because it's up. You guys can go and watch the HBO special. It's worth watching, even though it's incredibly sensationalized.
It is. I
Yeah.
mean, that's one thing that has to be said about it for sure, is that it is definitely angled in such a way that you you're taking it at face value when there
Yeah.
likely is a lot more depth to the ethical concerns that are being brought up. And certainly I do think that this was a very manipulative institution, but there's so many moving parts to that that we may never fully understand.
Yep. And a lot of people were hurt, and probably people who were completely innocent in some ways are going to spend time in prison because of it. And everybody knows the old Chinese curse, may you live in interesting times. Lesser known, but equally important, is may you come to the attention of important people. That's another Chinese curse. And I will tell you, and I can't tell you how I know this because it would be violating a confidence that I can't violate, but I know that Raniere came to the attention of important people, and some of them were a very rich family in Canada who happens to make whiskey, whose two daughters were, or two of the women in that family were involved with Raniere and dumping millions of dollars into his organization. And the elders of that family maybe were upset and made some phone calls. That might be part of why this blew up in the way that it did. That's purely conjecture, no evidence for it. Don't take me at face value. I did not say this. You did not hear it. Scott gets it, yes. These are not the droids you're looking for. But, you know, if you want to ruin anybody in this country, you just have to mention sex. And as far as I can tell, while there's all of these things flying around. Most of what seems to be going on was between consenting adults and was consensual, even if it was weird. I mean, yes, there was this whole master slave thing. I am less impressed with that because I live in the Bay Area and I've been to San Francisco, and I've been to parts of San Francisco where not only is the master slave thing a thing, but they did it a whole lot better than Ranieri ever did. And everybody's happy. But be that as it may, that's not the problem. That it was a sex group is not the problem. The problem is that it was a manipulative group. The problem is he said, yeah, come in and this is an all women's group. And he didn't even say this. He had his minions say, this is an all women's group and you can join it. But first you have to give me all of this collateral, which should preferably, if you're a cute babe, include naked pictures. And then you don't find out that he's actually the head of it until you are totally socked in.
Yeah, so to clarify, this was like you had the over group and then you have a little subgroup within the overall institution, which was women only. And you had this hierarchy, kind of like a pyramid scheme, where you had people in roles of the master, and then they had their slaves, and then those slaves could have underling slaves. It was very strange. But little did the people down the ladder know that Ranieri was at the very top of it all. And again, this was supposed to be a women's group, but the head of it is a man.
Yeah.
So
people did not ask the right questions in this from the get-go, and by the time they got to this whole DOS thing, they were totally not asking the right questions. And this is something anybody who's listening, especially you guys who are up here who are a part of our group, I always want you, with me, with Noor might slap you around a little bit if you ask her too many questions, but with anyone that you are dealing with, you need to never ever cede your ability to question and your own agency. And I will tell you that in my Sufi training, I had to do the you will follow the orders of the Sheikh thing. And the only reason that I could do that is because I utterly trusted my teacher not to tell me to do anything stupid. And if he had, I would have walked away. And I know I would have walked away because I have done exactly that. I was in a Sufi group. Early on, I was hanging out with them, and it was really interesting because it was all about the perfect master. You have found the perfect master, and you can follow him, and he will take you to God. And then one day, one of his head minions came and said, "Master wants a girlfriend. Go out and find him one." And I said, "What?" He said, "No, it's okay. His wife is completely down with this. Go find him a girlfriend. Make sure she's young. Make sure she's pretty. Make sure she's intelligent. Make sure she's compliant. And go find her and bring her here so that master can have a girlfriend." And I was like, "Bye. See you later."
So what was it about that put you off? That made you feel like this is a no-go. I'm peacing out.
Because it was presented to me in a way that felt like bullshit to me. And as far as I'm concerned, if you need a girlfriend, you go get one yourself. If you are not cool enough to find yourself a girlfriend, you don't deserve one. And then I found out that there was a lot of shenanigans going on. But for me, that was like, no, there's something utterly wrong here. Because the question was, why does Master need a girlfriend? He's sad. Why is he sad? Because he's not home in Iran. And it's like, dude, if he's sad because of that, he ain't a master.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
so that was my, literally the last day I had anything to do with that group was when that all came down. And people might say, oh, it was a test and you failed the test. But I happen to know that some people, when that started happening, left the group who had been in that group for 10, 15, 20 years and who were pretty high up in it because it was bullshit. So what are the right questions to ask?
That was going to be my question to you. I mean, you obviously didn't.
Gilmar, you're good at asking questions. So help me out here. What are the right questions to ask?
Well, I'm not
Some
asking
dude
a
comes
question.
up here and says, I am the great. I am the wise and powerful Oz. What question do you ask?
All right, so I'm going to stop you there. And so the question I was going to ask you about, though, is, I mean, you obviously didn't spend 10 years with this guy, but some people did. And I guess my question is, there should be a way of filtering this ahead of time. You shouldn't have to wait until he asks you to do something weird. There should be a way of asking appropriate questions when you're first coming into a group like that.
Yeah. In my
That
own
would
defense, I was in
decide-
my early 20s at the time, so I did not know as much as I do now.
Your testosterone was running high or what?
Yeah, there was that.
Yeah, okay.
And I was not as smart as I am now. Yeah, and I hung out with that group for about 2 years. And part of it is that the teacher was not always around. He was traveling from place to place. And so when I did not have contact with him, I was around people who were much more reasonable.
Gotcha. I understand that. Yeah.
But also, I was young and dumb.
Yeah.
At 23, and I was about 23 when I dusted my sandals off from that place. You don't know a lot. You think you know a lot, but you don't know a lot.
So it was a good educational experience for
It
you.
was a good educational experience. I knew a lot more after that, and I never fell for that one again. I learned to look for it. But
Aaron says
yeah.
the group changed over that time as well.
Probably so. And so,
Could have. Yeah,
what are the
what
questions I should have asked? I'll give you a hint. Somebody says, I am the perfect master. The question that I would ask now is, what does that even mean?
That's what comes up for me. Yeah.
What does that even mean? What does that mean? How do you live your life that would have any meaning at all?
Well, then you also need to find out, what it is that he claims or he or she claims to be teaching. And
Right.
is that something that you want to learn? And is that something that he's got a master, or he or she has got mastery over? And can he exhibit that mastery? And has he produced disciples who are themselves masters? I mean, those seem
Very,
like
very good, excellent point right there. For those of you who have not run across Jed McKenna and have not read him, he's up big time this month. The second chapter of his first book is a priceless description of exactly that thing. Not ever said better by anybody anywhere. The book is called Spiritual Enlightenment, The Damnedest Thing. Chapter 1 is brilliant. Chapter 2 is brilliant. Most of the book is brilliant. Some of it's lame.
It can be challenging. It can be a challenging read for some.
Yeah, and Jed is not real, so don't worry about it.
Yeah.
But if you are not producing people at your level, you are incompetent as a teacher. Let me repeat that. If you are not producing people who are at your level, you are incompetent as a teacher.
Because the point is not to hold on to minions and to keep them in that state of having to kowtow to you as the teacher. No.
No, that's great for regular income. but
Right.
has nothing to do with the spiritual path. Now, I've told the story of the time that I went to the Gurdjieff group and listened to their lecture, and at the end of it asked one question, which was, how many, the guy who was the leader of this group, who wasn't there, he was off at his ashram or whatever one wants to call it, but he was being touted as man 5 or man 9 or whatever the number was, that he was the highest one. And it was like, how long has he been teaching? 20 years. In that time, how many people has he raised up to that level or near it? None. And they looked at me like I was crazy for even asking the question. But that needs to be the first question of a teacher. Well, second question. First question is, can you do? Second question is, can you teach? And this is true whether you're teaching spiritual stuff, martial arts, painting, anything. So, Cherie's husband is a painter. He's brilliant at it. You look at his work and you see that he can do. He teaches workshops, and you can look at the people who come to his workshops and their paintings at the end of it, and you can see that they can do. That means not only he can do, but he can teach. That's what you want.
So we have a couple of questions in the
Yes.
chat. Mustaqim asks, should we also need to have a basic idea to know if the answer is the correct one?
At least to know if the answer is a good one. I'm not sure, in some cases there's a correct answer, but there are good answers and bad answers. So if I say, I'm the smartest person in the world, and you say, how do I know? And I say, because I've taken tests. That's a bad answer.
What's a better one?
A better one might be, the organization Mensa says that I have the highest IQ that they've ever tested. In which case I would say two things. One, show me. Two, what does that mean? Like, I know guys who have really, really high IQs, including me. I have a very high IQ, which doesn't mean anything now that Trump has claimed to have a high IQ. I have a decently high IQ, you know, up there in the 1 percentile. And I hate to say it, but I can be incredibly stupid if I'm not careful. My high IQ does not mean shit other than I know how to take IQ tests. I'm really good at taking IQ tests, and that's what having a high IQ really means. It does not make me the smartest person in the world. It does not even make me the 10th smartest person in the world. And if I'm in the wrong environment, it probably makes me an incredibly stupid person.
Yeah. So Aaron suggests rather that good answers lead to better questions. And we do have a question from Scott, but I'm going to come back to that.
Yeah, which is a really important question.
Yeah. And I think that's right, Aaron. I think that we can, you know, investigating doesn't have to be confrontational or antagonizing, but, you know, investigating is a good thing. Asking questions is a good thing. Exploring is a good thing. I don't think we should refrain from those things.
Nope.
And
talking for a second.
Okay. Yeah, because when we investigate, we become better educated about what we, I don't want to say what we ought to, but in a sense, yeah, what we ought to be looking for in someone we're willing to give authority. We've talked about that before. We've talked about how the student, in a sense, gives the teacher their authority.
Yes.
And this is one way through which a teacher can earn their authority, is by answering questions in a way that is thought-provoking and substantial.
And the way I like to say it is that the student does not give the teacher authority. The student lends the teacher authority.
Yeah, I think that's much better. Yeah. It's not, you know, binding forever, sticky trap kind of stuff.
Yeah, and that's important. So let's get to Scott's question because it's important.
Yeah, okay, so Scott asks, what minimum time frame would you expect to see, quote unquote, graduated students?
I would expect in the work that we're doing, a time frame between 2 and 5 years. 2 years is about the minimum, 5 years is about the maximum. In 5 years, you should have completed the path. Doesn't seem like very long, does it?
No.
Because people go around thinking about, oh, it's 20 years, 30 years of work. And it's not. It's not 20 years and 30 years of work. It's 5 minutes of work sometimes. And then you got to do the mop up afterwards, but that's a different thing. But if you are serious in the work, if you apply yourself, if you do the work, 2 to 5 years. And you will be as Zen-like as any Zen master. You will be the Buddha that makes the grass green. If you do the work. Now, the trick is that oftentimes people don't get around to doing the work for 10 years. And a good teacher will send them on rather than keeping them around. Everybody here, everybody in the people on YouTube can't see the line of people that are up there that I'm actually talking to, but all of you actually do the work. And to me, that's important. I have no use for what the Zen guys call robe hangers and rice bags. Just not worth it.
I've never heard that term before, that phrase.
Yeah. That's most of the people in any monastery. They're robe hangers and rice bags.
Yeah.
But one of my criteria for working with people is you do the work. Doesn't seem terribly unreasonable, does it? Do the work. So, back to the questions. What questions do you need to ask of anybody who you go to in hopes of learning something or being coached?
What do you think, Shri?
There's quite a few things that have come to mind as humility. I look at a teacher's sense of humbleness when they're teaching, to be open to the students' questions. So it doesn't matter what the question is, the way you make a student feel that they can expose themselves, be vulnerable and ask a question without feeling like an idiot or, you know, this is a really dumb question. I feel really sad when people say that. It's not a dumb question. It's a question that you need to ask and let's work through together versus I will tell you something, and that's what it is. I want to have the capacity to challenge the teacher and likewise the teacher's challenging me so that I can actually ask a question that's important to me right at that moment. It will change. Sometimes it's a new, fresh way of looking at something. When I'm teaching something and someone asks something, it's like, oh, that's actually better perspective in this moment. We should approach it this way or try this, to be able to suspend my own opinion and my own perspective is important. If I see a teacher is able to do that, I want to know more about that teacher because they have that capacity of learning.
Yeah. So what are some warning signs that you need to ask questions? How about this? Grandiose claims.
Yeah.
That's a big one.
Yep.
I mean, I know that Keith Raniere was claiming to be a champion judoka. Maybe he was, maybe he wasn't. I don't know that anybody ever checked. And that's something that's easy to check. Because if you claim to be a world champion at something or a national champion of something, there are some records of it. And if you catch somebody in untruths like that, you have to begin looking at them.
So we have a couple comments. Scott asks, what is the basis for their knowledge?
Good question. And yes, Aaron mentions Frank Dux, who most of you probably, if you're not in the martial arts world, you have not heard of this guy, but he claimed to have been secretly trained by ninjas when he was a kid and started Dux-Ryu ninjutsu and had a movie made about him where Jean-Claude Van Damme played him called
Wow. Scott says, met him once, wasn't impressed.
Yeah, I've heard that a lot.
So case in point, really. Is that the name of the movie, Bloodsport?
Yep.
Well, Aaron gives that a thumbs up, though.
Yeah, the movie for its time was fun. And it's always fun to watch good old Jean-Claude do the splits.
Yeah. Okay,
But
so.
just like everybody else, he was choked out by Jane LaBelle. But only once. So one important thing to note is that if the person's message is inconsistent, you should probably ask some questions.
Money.
Money
is a big one.
yes.
Watching gurus who claim to have, very minimal belongings, and yet they are in palatial mansions and Rolls Royces and Bentleys and all this kind of thing, and actually allowing that kind of excessive lifestyle to be part of their lifestyle, even though they're claiming certain things, and there's people crying poor mouth in their system, and you just think, what the incongruency of what they're teaching and what they're doing. So not asking questions about that. Where do they actually get their income? What are they demanding? As soon as somebody said to me in a particular yoga group I had been introduced to, said that I had to start tithing, actually used the word tithing to them, and they're in America and I'm in Australia. I'm thinking, no thanks. What do I get out of that? It's like, you want me to give 10% of everything I earn? I don't think so.
That's
I never heard from them. Yeah, and
That's
so I grew up in that system as well. And you just think, where's that money going, and what are you making, and why are there people suffering in our system? That was so incongruent. Their life and the money just wasn't right. those sort of claims. They're the things I would question straight away. They come out, as well as the sex thing, where you see people in multiple relationships and you think, how is that okay?
Well,
And how is that consensual when there's a kind of coercion? I say the word coercion because there's a new bill trying to be passed in Australia about coercive behaviour, where people are stuck in relationships out of fear, and is actually the system driving a fear in you that if you leave, you will die and you'll be abandoned and you'll be lonely and, you know, no one will want you, and or you're not going to go to heaven because you've abandoned the chosen people. Oh, that one gets my goat.
yeah, my point of view, and this is going to perhaps shock some people, is I think that if some teacher goes out there and says, hey, this is a sex cult. If you join us, we're going to teach you how to do wild, crazy tantric sex, and that's what we're all about, and does it up front, I have no problem with that, because people have agency and they can choose to do that or not. If they say, oh, we are a nice celibate group and we are not doing anything other than worshiping God, and then the teacher goes, hey, but I have a special secret way to worship God that I'm going to show you, that's a
Shady.
serious problem.
That's like gets into grooming and weirdness.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, if people are utterly upfront about what they're doing and it's all consenting adults, I don't care what they do. If they get enlightened doing it, more power to them. They just need to be upfront. And you know, the thing with Raniere and his stuff was that he was not upfront. And there were warning signs, and the questions did not get asked, and people got hurt.
So, you know, I haven't seen that movie, obviously, but I guess my question is, you know, is it really lack of intelligence?
No.
Or is there something else that's motivating this? And I suspect in many cases, let me just finish the sentence. I suspect in many cases, the issue is that we want certainty rather than truth. You know, instead of looking at it as a process to try to get a skill or try to get an understanding or try to get, many of us, and myself included, I mean, I would love to have certainty dropped in my lap, you know, and if someone promises certainty and does enough tidbits on the way to make me think, oh, well, maybe he's got something there, or she's got something there, I might actually put rationality aside for a while to sort of see what comes of this. So I guess my question really is, what motivates?
I personally always wear a St. Heisenberg medal. You know, some people do St. Christopher. I prefer St. Heisenberg because there ain't no certainty.
Uncertainty principle. Okay. Yeah.
And people want it. Sure, everybody wants it. Everybody wants to know the real thing. And when you are told what you believe is the real thing, you stop thinking. And that is the death of reason.
And that seems to be almost like a social or a cultural issue. I mean, even in the political sphere.
It may even be a human issue. My philosophy teacher pointed out to me years and years ago that the period of time between a new real scientific discovery and its acceptance by the general scientific community was 1 generation.
As they die out, right? I mean, that's, you know, structure of scientific
the old guard has to die out for that to be generally accepted.
So what's the antidote to that? I mean, if it is a human need or a human motivation, what's the real antidote to that? Do you have to just simply burn your fingers off enough to finally say, I'm not going to fall for that again? Or is there...
So that's one way to do it. And it worked for me. But I prefer to teach people the necessity of thinking for themselves and questioning. Hence this talk.
Wow.
this talk is part of the antidote. You are part of the antidote. Because one reason I keep you around is because you are an example of how one should question. And it doesn't have to do with intelligence at all. Really smart people do really dumb things. It has to do with giving up your ability to think. And so the question is important. Scott had something to say here.
Yeah, I'm going to touch on Aaron's comment because it's related to our current discussion. He says, I think it's part of learning how to learn, which is a continuous process. He says that's how it seems to him, at least. And I think that's true. Yeah. And Scott, tying back to the way that teachers and teachings are presented, he says, the argument has been made that in the US, if one doesn't charge highly for their time and skills or exhibit, or, parentheses, or exhibit wealth from such, unparentheses, it isn't actually valuable or worth the seeker's time.
And that is a problem.
Yeah. Yep.
And you also have the opposite of that, of how dare you charge money for what you're doing?
Yeah, it's very challenging in that way.
I ran into that a few weeks back with one of these weird little online Gurdjieff groups. There was one woman on it who was incensed that there was a charge for the ultimate Enneagram course. And it's like, how dare you do that? No real teacher would do that. And obviously, she never knew Gurdjieff because he occasionally charged people huge amounts of money for his work. But the most important thing is that if Noor and I devote easily 40 hours a week to trying to keep this group going, to meeting with people privately, working with them, all of this kind of stuff. And if we don't charge a reasonable amount of money, we starve, and then we can't do this.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I have no interest in charging $5,000 for a seminar, unless I don't like you, in which case I will charge you $5,000 for the seminar in the hopes that you go away. But, I am more interested in outreach to people who are normal, who are not super rich, but, maybe are doing well and could do better, and who are not necessarily Anglo.
Yeah.
One thing I'm very, very happy about is we are now starting to get our talks subtitled in good Spanish, which is really exciting to me.
Shout out to Marcelo.
Yes, Marcelo. Yeah. This is really nice because, you should not be excluded from this if you don't speak English. I would like to get our talks subtitled in any number of languages. Hint, hint, Mustaqim. Zainab. I'd love to get this subtitled in Farsi. That would really piss a bunch of people off.
Yeah.
But, everything at its time. It would be fun to do that, and it's nice to be able to buy food and pay rent. And if all of a sudden we made $1 billion doing this, I wouldn't cry about it, but then I'd start doing everything for free for then on.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of value balancing that goes on. Like, yeah, we do, gosh, this light sucks. We do need to make a living. We all do, including people who are doing the kinds of work that we like to do, that we enjoy and find meaningful. and yet we want to make it as I've written, as accessible as possible. And those two things are in flux all the time, but they're both very important.
Yeah. And so you have people like Ranieri, who his organization was really, really big on recruiting.
Yeah, I wanted to touch back on that since
Yeah.
it's a great example. Like, they were actively targeting successful but insecure people. People who were doing really well at what they were doing, but were kind of having a lot of imposter syndrome and feeling stuck. And they had money to throw into their training and all that stuff. They had the resources to grow the institution on a huge scale. And so that made them very appealing, because not only could you use their money, but you could use their attractiveness and their connections and all of that stuff as well to grow the group and make it look good, make them their poster children.
I don't know what's going on with your camera, Noor, but from time to time you go completely
Yeah.
dark.
I know, the light is very bad, and I can't take the light from the awning off, so it's kind of fading in and out. Can't really do anything about it. I apologize.
Yeah, we'll do better next time.
Aw, thanks, Scott. Light in the dark. Yep.
Okay, so I guess something else I'm curious about. Again, I have not seen this movie or know anything about this group, but it sounds like from what you're saying that this group or this guy actually provided a worthwhile service for people, at least at the beginning, right?
Yeah, I do think that was the case. I do.
So I guess the question is, I mean, here's someone promising something that looks desirable. He's delivering a lot on that for a while. How long do you play along with somebody like that? And at what point do you start that sort of question? In other words, you're getting a service, you kind of like what you're getting.
And you're getting a benefit.
And you're going to get a benefit. So where along do you have to wait for something horrible to happen, like, ask to find a guy or girlfriend before you actually see there's something weird going on? Or is there a way of getting at it earlier?
Well, you look for incongruence. And that's why I say when somebody claims to be the smartest guy in the world, you need to ask, how do I know that that's true?
Okay.
If somebody says, I invented all of this, you need to ask, where's the evidence of that? I've seen this all before. You've rearranged it in a really interesting way, but you haven't invented anything here.
So it's someone like you who makes a point of saying, oh, but I'm just a nice guy. I don't make any big claims to myself or so forth. We're essentially going to go on for a while, expecting to get some kind of beneficial result. But you're not, or a guy like you at least, would not be saying anything that, you don't claim to be the number 9 in the world or whatever the hell this guy was, So there isn't.
So how can you tell whether or not I'm real?
Yeah. How do I know about that early in the game is the question.
Jesus said, by their fruits you will know them. That becomes a really important idea. What do these people actually produce? What do I actually produce in the world? Do I do anything that's actually any good? Have I actually helped a single person anywhere?
But notice that kind of begs the question, because what interesting thing about this guy we're talking about was that he was delivering stuff that was helping people.
Yes, he was. And that's not begging the question. You know better than that, Ilmar.
Right. Okay.
I hate it when people use that term incorrectly.
I'll take that back. All right, take that back. But still, here's the guy that's delivering stuff in the early stages of the game. And if he wasn't stupid enough to make these grandiose claims, there would be nothing incongruous to check out.
That's true. And if there's nothing incongruent, then he would have been in a much better position.
Mhm.
Now, the other thing is, he made a huge amount of money, and what did he do with it?
Mm.
What did he do with that money? You know, Noor and I don't make a lot of money doing this, but a lot of what we make goes back into helping people who don't have money.
Yep.
For instance, you know, we don't turn anybody away for lack of funds. And those of you who can donate to the organization, support the ones who can't. And, you know, that's where we walk our talk. And sometimes you have to do a little research. Is that person the kind of person that you are better off, or people are better off from having hung out with, and they go away feeling more self-empowered, or do they go away thinking that he's the guru? I'm pretty sure that none of you guys here think I'm the guru, right? Anybody who thinks I'm the guru, show of hands.
He just got a scholarship or whatever.
Yeah, well, Mustaqim also, in his language, guru just means teacher. Your kindergarten teacher is a guru, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
So it doesn't have that same connotation in Bahasa. And that's important. I mean, yes, I teach you guys stuff. So if I'm teaching you Silat, you can call me guru. I don't encourage it, but you can,
Yeah.
because that's the proper title of somebody who teaches Silat.
Yeah. And I have friends who tease me too with titles and stuff, because they know that that's not what I desire, but it's their way of just kind of giving me an affectionate nudge,
Yeah.
acknowledging that I am a teacher.
But nobody here has the idea that I am somebody who you should follow.
Maybe that's a clue, maybe that's worthwhile highlighting. Maybe I suspect the ability to leave a group or leave a teacher, and neither the group nor the person leaving feels upset about it necessarily, that might itself be a clue. You know, because I think most of these groups that sort of want to suck you in are not especially happy if anybody wants to leave, right?
Oh yeah, it
Or-
invalidates them.
And what-
Yeah.
It invalidates them if you
Yeah.
leave.
Yeah. And so that might itself be a kind of a touchstone for whether this is a legitimate group or not.
Yeah. And I think I think we're touching on an important thing, but I also want to acknowledge that, yeah, there can be some emotions involved, like, oh, I miss so-and-so, I haven't seen them in a long time.
Mhm.
But it's not that sense of possession, like this person is mine and they can't work with anyone else.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. One of my favorite students came to a point where he had to go his own way, and we are still really good friends. And during the time when he had to reconstitute himself, I missed him. I missed talking with him because I really liked him. I still really like him. He's a great guy. I totally support what he's doing. And that happens more often than not. As a matter of fact, it happens most of the time. As people come, they learn what they need to learn, they move on. Sometimes they come back, sometimes they don't. And you have to be completely detached from that as a teacher. And
Yep.
that's for us, that's one of the hardest lessons to learn, because you can get attached to your students. You can be sad if they go, as opposed to what you should be, which is happy. And if you're really lucky, you finish the student, you complete them, in which case there's no need for them to hang around. They should go off and do their own thing. And oftentimes you send them off to do their own thing.
Yeah.
Go forth, teach.
Yeah, sometimes they're not excited about it, but you know that this is the next step for them. And it's just, you don't have that codependency involved where you are emotionally enmeshed with one another.
Mustaqim has something here.
Yeah, we have a couple comments. Aaron says, a red flag from my point of view is incorporating quote unquote levels that don't directly correlate to quantifiable skills or abilities.
Amen to that. Yes, that's an important thing. And interestingly, Ranieri did that. He had, what was it, the stripe path, which is sort of like
Yeah.
belts in Taekwondo. Not
And they
just
would wear different
yeah,
colored sashes over their shoulders, behind their necks at events and stuff that would indicate their status within the strike path.
yeah. And I am always dubious of that.
And it was a
Having been in the
huge,
martial arts for years, I can tell you that in most cases, those belts around your waist mean absolutely nothing. One of the few cases where that's not so is in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which at this point in time, their belts are honest. If you have a blue belt or a black belt in their system, you know your stuff, as opposed to you just bought the color for your belt.
right, or you paid so much money to go through the program, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you've achieved a bunch of skills as a result of going to 6 weeks of whatever workshop it was.
Yeah. And you don't get a new belt for bringing more people into the school.
Yeah, no to that. Okay, so Mr. Keem says, to be able to keep asking the right questions, should we always keep the guard up? Doesn't it create a blockage to learning?
And you don't keep your guard up, you keep your discernment up.
Yeah.
Mustaqim, if I say to you, there is a special ceremony that you can do that will bring you lots and lots of money, you don't have to keep your guard up for that. You have to keep your discernment up for that. And your discernment should tell you, wait a minute, how can doing a ceremony bring me lots of money, and why would that be good? Questions. If there's such a ceremony, why aren't you rich? If you aren't rich and you don't do that ceremony to bring lots and lots of money, why should I do it? And
Or
most
why
importantly,
don't you do it?
why should
Yeah.
I pay you $10,000 for that ceremony? So that's not guard, that's just discernment.
Curiosity is a good thing.
Yes. And if you are with a real teacher, when they speak to you, they'll say what's in your heart, and you'll hear that. And what's in your heart is probably not, I need to give this guy all of my wealth, or I need to give this guy 10% of my income every month for the rest of my life. That's probably not in your heart.
We know it's not in Cherie's heart.
Hopefully it's not in any of your hearts.
Well, that would come into Aaron's point about levels. You know, I think there's the levels thing works, I think, in two different ways almost. One is as a sign of status, but I think more insidiously, having levels is kind of a promise. Well, over the next hump, over the next hill, there's gonna be this extra stuff. And over the next hill after that, there's gonna be this extra. So it's a way of sucking people into a trip which may or may not be completely satisfying at the state you're in right now, but it has this promise at the end.
Right. We've talked about that in the sense of like keeping your rice bowl full, right?
Yep.
Yeah. By adding stuff to your martial arts system or to your spiritual training school thing, and it's just like it never ends.
Yes, for the teacher, it's a way of keeping their rice bowl filled, but for the student, it's a lure. It's
Yeah,
a lure,
exactly.
Something which makes the path, even though it doesn't feel good right now, but it's kind of promised over the next hill, basically.
Yeah, the Scientologists were great about that.
Very much so. Very much
Yeah,
so.
they had, I mean, when I first started looking into Scientology, the highest level they had was like OT5. And now it's like, I don't even know because I don't pay attention to them anymore, but more and more levels get added all the time. And, you were supposed to be completely enlightened and at cause over everything at OT5, but why are you needing the rest of this stuff? Because they need more money.
Mm-hmm.
I've
Keeps
seen
you
this
involved.
happen over and over and over again. Martial arts are the same way. One SEALOT teacher I knew kept adding all of this new secret stuff to his art that, oh, I'm releasing this now. These new jurus, this new that. Come take this $1,000 seminar so you can learn them. And that's why it takes 20 years to learn a system, because they keep putting shit in there. I am happy to say that the system of SEALOT I teach, I can teach that system to you in a year. I can teach you every part of it. It'll take you the rest of your life to refine it, but you can learn the whole system in a year. It's not that big. So there you have it.
Do you have any last questions that anyone hasn't had the chance to have asked yet? No. Doesn't look like it. Okay, that's great.
Well, I have to tell you guys that since you have heard this, from time to time, I may tell you something completely outrageous. And if you don't question me about it, you flunk. Lots and lots of people have been hurt by not questioning outrageous claims. And the thing is, maybe there is some totally enlightened being somewhere who is constantly fixed on the path and is in the void 24/7. I don't know who that is. It ain't me. It ain't even Noor, and she's much better than me. But every teacher I know has, as the Bible says, feet of clay. You are not done with this path, no matter what you think, until at least an hour after you've taken your last breath. Then you can say that you're done with the path. Until then, you still have work to do. And yes, you can be awake. You can be totally awake. You can sit here and go, I'm awake. And I still need to wash the damn dishes. It's the nature of the thing. The presumption of continuous enlightenment is one of the fallacies by which people fleece you of your money and goods. Don't fall into it. Just be awake. Be it whenever you think of it. When you don't think of it, notice that you don't think of it, wake up again. And when you're awake, remember that the awakeness you experience is the same awakeness experienced by the greatest masters who have ever lived. There is no difference. Your awakeness is the same awakeness that the Buddha was called the Buddha for. And don't buy into people's bullshit. Ask questions. You owe it to yourself. So that's what I have to say.
Yeah, I think that's good stuff. I say, when you meet someone who strikes you as inspiring and stuff, just be curious, be open-heartedly curious, and at the same time look for those things that bring up that feeling in you of like, oh, is that okay with me? Is that actually okay with me? And then look into that. See why that feeling might be coming up for you. Ask questions. You can ask them kindly if you want to. But in any case, don't be afraid to ask them. And if you get a bad response to asking those questions, that's a sign unto itself.
Yeah.
So, That's what I have to say. And
works.
it is getting to be
Yeah, this talk went on
pretty
longer
late.
than it should have,
Yeah.
but it's important. So, without further ado, I'm going to stop the recording.
Yeah, I just
and
want to say thanks to everyone who's watched all the way through. Thanks for being here, and we will see you next week.
Yep. Bye, folks.